Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of The Chris White Show, a podcast dedicated to helping small to medium-sized business owners and anyone looking to make the entrepreneurial leap. I'm Christopher White, your host. I'm an entrepreneur based in New York, Brooklyn, New York, to be exact. I currently own two companies, a boutique digital agency and a staffing and recruiting firm. And this week, we have as our guest none other than Tom Conlon. Tom and I go a bit ways back. He's the founder of North Street Creative and based in one of my favorite towns, Providence, Rhode Island. North Street is a creative services, design, and branding strategy studio. You can check them out at northstreetcreative.com. And I'm sure we're going to get a bit more into what North Street's all about in a little bit. But hey, Tom, what's going on, buddy? Great to have you on the show.
What's up, buddy? Good to see you, man.
Doing good, man. Do you have a good summer?
I did. I have actually. You can't see this on audio, but I'm wearing a little shirt with little guys holding surfboards and chasing the summer. I guess
Nice.
Not ready for it to end.
Surf vibes, baby.
That's Labor Day, right? But like,
do you surf?
no, man. I skateboard. I used to skateboard.
Yeah.
Surfed like twice in my life.
Yeah. I've been trying surfing a little bit more. It's hard, man. Surfing is no joke. It's like
It's hard for
full
us.
body workout.
It's hard for us older guys to pick up new skills.
Yeah, dude. But no, just great to have you on your show. I wanted to jump in and go through one of my questions I love asking successful business owners. What's your favorite success quote? Why is it your favorite? How do you try to apply it to your everyday life?
Okay, so I read a lot of business books. I read like Jim Collins and Gino Wickman and Daniel Pink.
Legends.
I love all of those guys. But I also read a lot of sort of like existential kind of like life books. So I've been reading this book called Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, which is really good. But right now I'm reading a book called Radical Honesty by a guy named Brad Blanton. For me, it's mind blowing. It's kind of about just like, I don't know, telling the truth in all aspects of your life and small truths, right? Like it doesn't have to be like big, huge secrets or anything. But there's this quote in it that I love, and it goes like this. Whatever your main struggle is, it is insignificant in the face of your death. It is petty and unimportant and has no meaning at all. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So for me, that's just like a really verbose way of saying life's short, man. Like,
Drops the mic.
like just do you, whatever you're stressed out about today, like, on your deathbed, you're not gonna care. So,
Dude, yeah, no, my mom sent me maybe my mom was sending me a message, but she sent me the Daily Stoic. Have you ever read that book?
the Daily Stoic, like
Stoic, Stoic. Yeah.
I've never read that one, but I've read like some Ryan Holiday, who's like big into stoicism.
Yeah. No, that's like sort of like just like straight to the point kind of stuff.
Exactly.
It's just like stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Man, like today, what am I? I mean, it's Friday, so I'm not too stressed out. But like yesterday, I had a lot of meetings and I had like some deadlines, and so I was stressed out in the morning. And it's like, wait a minute, like who cares? Like enjoy like making breakfast for my kids and like take them off to school and don't stress out about these like deadlines that I'm not going to remember in 5 years.
I know, man. Yeah, it's really like that retrospective like aspect. Like when you think about 5 years from now, is this really going to be that important? That's something that I've been trying to apply a lot more.
Yeah. I think if you look back at some of the most stressful times in your life, work related at least, like it's just, you laugh at it, just how minor it is. You know what I mean? You're like, man, I was on the edge of like a nervous breakdown back then, and now it's like you look back at it and you laugh, right?
Yeah, man. Oh no, that's man. That's just on point. What's your biggest failure that you've had as an entrepreneur, and feel free to, or could be personal, but generally like what during your entrepreneurial journey, is there something that stands out to you as sort of like just one of your biggest failures?
I think it was it's not necessarily a failure, but like definitely like a realization that I wish I had earlier in the business, which is that like when and I think a lot of entrepreneurs make this mistake, which is they start a business doing something that they really love to do, but what they don't realize is that once you start your own business, you're no longer just a practitioner. Meaning, like, like
Mhm.
I have a background as a designer and developer, so like my job easily could just be spent like 8 hours in a dark room in front of a screen, typing, not talking to another single human being. And I think what I didn't realize was that when I started North Street, it's like, okay, I'm busy now, but what happens when I wrap these projects up and where's the next project coming from, right? Like, and if all you do is spend 8 hours a day in front of a computer screen coding or designing, like your next project's not going to come from anywhere. And
Yeah.
so I had that
Yeah.
realization. I mean, I was sitting there, and this is a long time ago. This is like maybe 2014, I think. And I remember sitting there and like sort of three projects that we were sort of talking to people about or bidding for just like didn't happen. And I was like, oh my God, like where is my next project coming from? And I was like, I started looking around and I'm like doing nothing. I'm doing absolutely nothing proactive to like go and get a
Yeah.
project. And so like, dude, it got bad. Like I started looking at like, I just started Googling things like networking after dark or networking at night. Like, I like found myself at all these like random meetups with people from like random industries. And I was like, whoa. So I don't know. That was a realization that came. And I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs about that. And interesting,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people in there's a lot of lawyers that it's the same thing where they like they become a lawyer thinking that like great, I love the law and I'm going to practice law and I'm going to you know do whatever if it's with crime or if it's with like business law. What they don't realize is that like half their job, if not more, is like bringing in new clients to the firm.
Dude. Dude.
Right, and it's like
It's like
so like I think I'm in the same position where it's like I used to love to be a designer and a developer, but like I can't spend my day doing that.
well, not man like that. It's incredible that you bring that up because I like reading and getting inspiration from a lot of different sources. And so I was reading this real estate book, this guy, mega successful real estate guy, and he said, uh, your job actually is lead generation. That's your job, you know. Whether you're, in an independent real estate agent, whether you're starting a small agency, whatever it is, your job is actually lead generation. And having more leads than you need is a good problem to have.
100%.
And yeah, and he talks about like leads, listings, and leverage, or like for an agency, it would be leads, like projects, and leverage. And what's leverage? Leverage is like people to do the work. It's so it all kind of snowballs and compounds. If you have more leads than you need, then you can comfortably hire people to give you leverage, to do the projects. But if you're not spending enough time on lead generation, then you're going to be stuck in that like sort of loop.
Yeah.
And I'm so with you, man. I basically had the same issue when I first started out, and I was a technician, knew how to code, and was just coding as much as I could and getting projects that came my way, but not spending time doing like dedicated business development, kind of
Totally.
work.
Totally. I've talked to so many people over the years, especially kind of recently, and it doesn't really even matter what industry it is. Sometimes it's like marketing.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever. I mean, but they're like, oh yeah, I got really comfortable. Like I was busy, like,
Mm.
and then I let the lead gen machine, or I let the sort of like new business machine just sort of go on the back burner because I was so busy and I was satisfied with the amount of work I had on my plate, and it's like that
Mm-hmm.
can never be comfortable.
Yeah, man. No, man. And you're bringing back it sounds like you must have read the E-Myth. You've read
Yes.
the E-Myth? Yeah. Definitely shout out for anybody listening, should definitely read the E-Myth. The E is for entrepreneurial myth.
Yeah.
I think there's a second edition even, but highly recommend that for
Yeah.
anybody who's
Michael Gerber.
yeah.
Actually also it made me think too of Daniel Pink's "To Sell Is Human." Have you read that one? It's really
No.
good. It's really just about how like I don't know. I think when you're a practitioner or technician, and so you're a designer or a developer, it's like the
Hmm.
idea of being a salesperson kind of makes you feel a little icky, right? You're like,
Yeah, yeah.
but like so there's this book, Daniel Pink, "To Sell Is Human," and it's like he's like, look, we're always selling. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like trying to get your kid to eat like a health, trying to get your kid to eat like
Right.
dinner, like that's you're selling, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a really good book just to give it perspective. And also, like, what's wrong with people? Like, for me, it's like I provide a service to people who need it, right?
You're
And
helping them.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
okay. So if you don't want it and you're not interested, fine. I mean, that's,
Hmm.
but I mean, I'm out there to help people that I have the skill to help with, and
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah. It's almost like, they should teach sales in school. I don't, it's not really taught. And some people think it's innate. I don't really think it's that innate. Some people may have just more of a, less inhibitions around like being outgoing and stuff like that. But, you do have to be organized. You do have to really,
Yeah.
you know, be mindful of the way you do things if you are going to be efficient with sales. But, I don't know. I just feel like there's some missed opportunity there during childhood where we could maybe be doing a better job teaching people how to like just sell. I don't know. I don't know any other way to put that. But I always think of it as like I'm helping someone. I'm helping their business. I'm helping their life. Like
Yep.
why do I need to be ashamed about that? You
Yeah.
know?
Or also, I mean, like you get like thousands of cold emails a day, and like most of them are garbage, but some of them hit you at that right time,
Mm-hmm.
right sort of like need, right? It's like, oh yeah, I am looking for that right now, or I have been thinking about that. So like, great, thanks for landing in my inbox. And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah. No.
it's
No.
like,
Exactly.
if I'm not interested, like I just delete it.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
but I agree that teaching. I mean, that's another thing to go back to lawyers. Like, I don't. I've talked to a lot of lawyers, and I don't think anybody tells any of them before they take out these giant loans and go to like law school that like, hey, by the way, as much as you like the law, like 50% or more of your job is going to be actually going out networking, selling, trying
Mm-hmm.
to develop your book of business. Because I think if they told them that at the beginning, like before they applied to law school, I think most of them would be like, "No, I'm out."
Yeah. Especially in that industry, because I'm not a lawyer, but as I know more lawyers, like, and you see how that industry works, and it's like, yeah, you have to, like, you'll be here with the firm, but you got to, if you want to make partner or do this, like, you got to really build up a book of business. And yeah, like it's like that's all sales, that's all business, that's all marketing, that's all making time every day to do that kind of stuff.
100%.
Um,
Not to get hung
yeah.
up on lawyers, we just happen to do like a lot of like we do a lot of law firm and professional services work, but also
Okay.
I'm out there talking to lawyers a lot. And it's like, yeah, like no one told me that this was a sales job.
Yeah. I thought you were just getting into a lot of trouble and had to speak to a lot of lawyers, but
That's,
I was like,
part,
why's Tom got to speak to so many lawyers?
services. My people.
Oh yeah. I was like, Tom speaks to a lot of lawyers. Wonder what that's about. um, so moving on from there, I've seen a shift in your business and I love it. I mean, I see what you're posting on LinkedIn. I see your guys' website, which is gorgeous. It looked to me like there was a mindful shift from being like a web dev shop that did some design and branding, to really being like a positioning and branding agency. Am I getting that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
man. And
Was
yeah, go ahead.
and was that a eureka moment, as I like to call it, for your business? Was that like a big mind shift for you? Like, was it scary, like sort of niching down that way? Like, what was that
I
process like?
mean, yeah, so I think it all came down to like niching down, but also differentiating, right? So, like, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of agencies like ours that have similar stories, which is like, you know, you're a designer, developer, you start getting a lot of freelance work, and then you're like, oh, cool, I can like maybe make a business out of this. But you're taking, I mean, I'm not even lying. Like, I would do anything for anybody for any amount of money when I started, right? Like we were like generalists that doesn't even do it justice. We were literally like, I would do like SEO, I would do a logo, I would do a website. I was doing like software application, like
Mm,
software development, right?
mm,
We were even doing like live in person, like Instagram feeds that were like projected on a wall. So it's
hmm.
like, if you
Wow.
asked me back in 2012, 2013, like what North Street did, I'm not even sure what my answer would have been, but I will tell you that no one at my company would have had the same answer, right? It would,
Mm,
oh,
wow.
we do websites, or it's like, oh no, we're this like events, this
Yeah.
like live event thing that we do, or I don't know, we do software, and so I think and then you start you start doing some reading and you start talking to other business owners, and there is a real sort of like push to niche down, right? And I was very resistant to that. I was like, well, what are you talking about? Why should I niche down? Because then I'm going to sort of like alienate 90%. If I'm focusing on 10% of the market, then I'm going to alienate 90% of it. But the more you read about it, the more you think about it, the more you speak to people with experience doing it, and the more you see people succeeding at it, it makes sense to not necessarily to niche down, but to like specialize and to identify as something, right? Because if you're all things to all people, then you're jack of all trades, master. And like that's what my agency kind of was, I think. And so we were always really good at visual design. And some of our projects, like we would do a website, but we weren't just doing a website where it was like, okay, well, we're going to like focus on the UX and then sort of like apply colors and type to it. It was a little bit like the opposite. It was like, oh, we're going to like develop this like look and feel for you with typography and color and pattern and image style. And then we're going to create a user interface out of that. And then that sort of just, people start seeing you do that, and then they start asking you, oh, can you guys do logos as well? And it's like, yeah, of course we can. And then we sort of get really deep into the logo process. And then that led to people asking us like, well, if you're already doing all of this research to get to know who we are, and you're speaking to like our internal and external stakeholders about like what makes this organization tick, and you're doing that just to create a logo, like how about doing it for kind of like our messaging or our mission, vision, values, and that sort of thing. And that's how that led to doing messaging and positioning. And we ended up getting enough of that work that we hired a full-time strategist a couple of years ago. And that was really a turning point for us. So I like to say, we're not a web design agency. We're definitely, I say we're a creative agency, or we're a branding agency that does websites really well, because, my background is I was building, WordPress websites. I was building custom content management systems myself at one point.
Really?
But, I'll never do that again. But we can go down that rabbit hole later. But yeah. So today I have a full dev team, and we've got our processes, and we build almost 100% on WordPress. But like we're not a dev shop. Like I don't do software development. I don't do apps. I don't even do like. I don't really do if we're working with another agency, say, and they hand us designs, like we don't do that. Like we're just sort of, we're a branding creative agency that does websites really well. And the reason, yes, it was about differentiation. But also honestly, Chris, like what I've noticed is that like doing that type of work gets us involved with clients further upstream. Right. So what I mean by that is like, if they come to us for a website, they've already probably got their logo and their messaging done, right? And they're ready to like build out the website. Whereas if they come to me for messaging or positioning or brand strategy or whatever, like that could be the first piece in a project that then becomes visual identity, logo, and then they're going to need a website, right? So I don't know. That's just kind of, that's the way I've looked at it, and I think it's been helpful. And also the nice thing is, I feel like I used to be there. There are so many different types of agencies in our world that do what we do, but I think like, one reason that you and I and some of other agency owners we know together is that like, yeah, we kind of sort of we're in the same universe, but we all do different things a little bit to a certain extent. And so like. You and I have talked about working together, and I've worked with like our mutual friend Jeff before, and like, it's just because we don't do exactly the same things, but we overlap enough, but we also have like specialties that the other don't do. So
yeah. I think it's at least important to have like sort of, I don't know if a niche is like, for lack of a better term, but that core product offering, that you do, and some things that are maybe tangential to that, but ideally you're out in the world marketing that. Also, I think people really don't, one thing I've been trying to get better at is remembering that, people really don't have the headspace to remember you for more than one or two things, maybe one thing,
Yes. Yeah.
and if you're out there saying like, well, all right, yeah, like you said, like our agency does everything, it's like, well, I don't know what I need you
Yeah.
for then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But was that hard? Like sort of going down that path, was there an initial point where you said, I'm going to start saying no? Like, what was that like, right? Like you made this
Yeah.
decision,
Yeah.
but you're still getting these leads, I presume, right? Like you're still maybe getting referrals, maybe you're still getting these leads, but was there a day where you just said, I'm going to stop, I'm going to start saying no to these leads? Like what was that like? How did that work?
Well, it was not like one day, but I think what happens is and first of all, like we also niched it down into like categories too. Like we're not a B2C agency, right? Like we're not like building e-commerce websites to sell sneakers. Like we're doing business to business. We're big into financial services, professional services, nonprofit healthcare. So that's like that automatically takes some projects off of our plate, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just like, oh, we don't do that. But yeah, I think it wasn't one day. It was more like what are the projects that we like working on, and also like learning from mistakes, right? Like we don't do e-commerce. I mean, we'll do it if like a nonprofit needs to like take donations or something like that. But like,
Sure.
but we're not building like a full on like store that sells products and then needs that sort of like constant kind of upkeep because I'll tell you what, I mean, the reason we don't do it is because we had a client once that like we did an e-commerce website for beauty products, and like every time a customer would enter their credit card wrong, like my client would call me and I'd be like, what? Oh, like, I can't handle this. Like my agency like isn't even built. It's just we're just not built this way, right? If I built the agency to like accommodate like kind of ongoing 24/7 like e-commerce needs of my clients, okay, maybe, but like I'm just not built that way, and you know what, I'm not interested in it, so I'm gonna know. So there's projects that come our way that are e-commerce, and I refer those out because I don't want anything to do with them. And then there's things like I mean, we built a whole custom software like application back in like 2015 for some marketing company, and it had to do with like it sort of like it aggregated search results from different search engines. It was a little bit of like a reputation management tool. We built it, but it was awful. I mean, it came out fine, but it was grueling, and it was like it was like really hard to do. And it's like, wait a minute, what's an agency that like makes logos and like sort of beautiful but like brochure websites and like can do annual reports? What's that company doing like in the business of software development? Like I don't think they should be. So to me, it wasn't one day. It was just more like, yeah, I didn't like doing that the last time, or how about this? Like the thought of doing this project stresses me out to the point where I'm not going to sleep at night. But but like these 4 other leads that are for like law firm websites or like a construction company branding, like we love that stuff and we do that in our sleep and like love to do it. But like, okay, well, I'm going to take on a software development project or like an e-commerce project that I'm just going to stress about. Like, no. So like, that's kind of how we started, I guess, niching down, but also kind of saying no to stuff.
Nice, man. What, I mean, obviously AI is, a pretty hot topic on everybody's minds. And, I see all this crazy stuff in the AI space. How is that, how are, creatives and designers, starting to leverage AI? Like, is it, how is it weaving its way into, I don't know, design tools like Figma? If it is, what do you see happening around that area?
Yeah, I think there's a couple cool things happening. Well, first of all, I am not getting caught up in the hype, right? I mean, like, because let's not forget that 6 months before ChatGPT came out, it was like crypto this, crypto that. Like everybody had changed their business.
NFTs and crypto.
Yeah, but like literally, like everybody was like, "Oh, I'm now like a blockchain shop," or whatever that even means. And it's like,
right.
Now blockchain and crypto, it's like yesterday's news, and ChatGPT or AI is today's news. Like, I'm not kidding, man. I have friends who've like just changed their agency to entrepreneurs. Some of them are just like, oh yeah, like that's it. I'm shutting down what I was doing and I'm starting this new thing. And it's like, whoa, like hold on.
Like, hold on, dude.
Yeah. So like I'm not there at all. I do think that there are going to be some. Well, first of all, I think there's going to be some really interesting stuff that happens in our industry, but I also think there's going to be a bit of like, I don't want to say backlash, but I would say something like,
Hmm.
I mean, at some point, Chris, I think that like we're going to be in danger of like AI talking to AI. Like, like AI is going to be creating content that AI is then going to be like repurposing and sending out to like people who aren't even real and fake inboxes. And
Wow.
I
Yeah.
think that we're going
Wow.
to get,
Yeah. Right. Right.
but I think
Wow.
what's going to happen is like, I think we're going to get to a point. Well, first of all, I was at WordCamp a couple weeks ago, which was
What is
awesome.
WordCamp? Sorry, I
It's
don't.
a WordPress. It's a like WordPress community conference. So that was like
Oh.
3 days in DC. Um, it was really cool. I mean, just learning, just a lot of content, practical and sort of high level on WordPress. But this guy said something. One of the keynotes said something like, ChatGPT is trained on everything that humans have created up until like the year 2021. So all it's really doing is mimicking human behavior. Like and we're all impressed with that, and we should be. Like it's impressive how AI is able to mimic human behavior, but like look at what we're applauding it for. We're applauding it for mimicking human behavior. Like until it starts doing its own thing, I think, and like I mean that's actually almost kind of scary, but like I guess the point is what happens when humans stop creating new things because we're just letting the AI do it, right? So like, I'm gonna have the AI write this, I'm gonna have the AI write that or create that. At a certain point, it's going to be AI mimicking AI, which is like, a bad copy of a bad copy of a bad copy, I think. So
Wow.
I think that there's going to be a return to like, do you know how like, I think it was 2022, like vinyl record sales were like, they hit like the record levels.
Yeah.
Not pun intended, I guess, but like they literally like vinyl is selling more than it ever has since like, I don't know, the 70s. And like, you also see these like, there's a movement to like more artisanal handmade products, right? Like artisanal sourced humanely from like wherever, right? And I think that that is all a direct response to like this like mass produced sort of like humanless, honestly, like
Interesting.
product, right?
Like, do you think? Sorry to jump in, but like, I sorry, my brain was going here. Is it almost? Sorry, is it almost like a situation where you think a client would say, I want to know that like there's actually little to no AI being used for this. Like, I want to know that humans are doing this.
I think that okay, so to get back to like the practical, like how we might use it, like I am working on ways to I think that we can reduce the number of hours that people work on things with an assist through AI. And actually, I talked to some kid recently. He was getting out of a boot camp, like a coding boot camp, and he was it was really funny. He was saying like, "Oh, they're not allowing like Chat GPT. They're not allowing you to use it." And this is a younger guy, right? Like just probably his 20s, and he's like, "That's like telling us we can't go into math class without a calculator." And I was like, oh, "That's funny, right?" So anyway, I think that like it's going to be used, like think about that, right? So calculator, like if you sit down and somebody gives you a math problem, like you're going to save at least 20 minutes, or, depending on how good your math is,
Right.
by just putting it into a calculator versus sitting down there and doing the math. And I think that that's like what AI. So for us, just to bring it back, like I can see us using AI to like, first of all, I would train my own kind of model versus using ChatGPT. But like I can see us using it, like my designers or creative director using it to like create mood boards, right? Or at least inspire mood boards, right? So it's like, imagine we train
Gotcha.
AI on how we create mood boards when we're going to go create a brand. And then we can even tag it with things like modern or like edgy or like, I don't know, corporate or like focused. And like all of a sudden the AI has been trained on this. And then a designer can sit down and instead of doing something that could take them multiple days, putting together like 3 mood boards, they could just kind of go in, enter some keywords, sort of talk about what they want the vibe of the brand to be. And then the AI kicks out a couple of mood boards. And I don't think they're going to be finished. I think they're going to be just inspirational. Like the designer takes it and runs with it. So that's how I can see that working. I also think it's going to help code. I mean, I don't know if you've used, have you used, what is it, GitHub Copilot?
GitHub Copilot. I actually haven't yet, and I don't do much coding anymore. But I've been, it's been on my to-do list to tinker it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's cool. And then I also have like another, one of our old developers who does like freelance for us. It's funny. He was like, I built this thing recently as a side project in PHP, but I hadn't done PHP in like 10 years and I didn't want to relearn it. So I just told ChatGPT what I wanted it to do and it kicked out the code and it worked. And it's like, okay, so like
Wow.
I see I don't know, I see it accelerating the efficiency of agencies like ours,
Yeah.
to do things
Yeah.
faster and more
It's
profitably.
like
But humans are still gonna. I mean, we'll
it's the boilerplate stuff. It's like the boilerplate
yeah,
stuff.
or like
You know
or
what I
like
mean?
or like the factory work, right? It's like
Yeah.
I think the strategic work, at least for now, seems safe,
Mhm.
um, because it just seems like you're gonna need a human brain for that. But like I think factory work or production work or work that you can reduce to the sort of like the metaphor of like punching a math program, math equation into a calculator, like that type
Mhm.
of work. Honestly, now that I think about it, I think that type of work is almost a waste of our time as humans. It's like, what am I going to sit down
Yeah.
and do long division for 10 minutes or I'm going to do this like complicated multiplication and addition to figure out how to leave a tip on my lunch, or
Yeah.
just going to punch it into a calculator and be done with it.
I think like, but before I get into my final question for you, but I think we've always been trying to find ways to be more efficient. Like, you could say that there was an era where somebody would say, "Oh, you can't bring a slide rule into math
Yeah, right,
class,"
right,
and then it was, "Oh, well, you can't bring a calculator in the math class. Wait, you can't bring a phone or a computer in the
right.
math class." You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so, if you look at it in that relative perspective, like all of these things are like sort of artificial ways to increase our intelligence, right? Like they're
Yeah.
all like iterations of AI, kind of, right? Even very early computers were almost like you could think of them as very early artificial intelligence. And this is just sort of like the next iteration of it. But yeah, I do have to admit, man, the first I started seeing ChatGPT in my news feed and I was like, okay, what is that? I mean, it's such a weird name,
I know.
So I was like, what is that? Okay, whatever. I'm busy. And then my buddy was like, yeah, like he's like, yeah, you want to get on a call? I got to show you something. And I was like, okay, and I thought we were going to be just talking about some other work related stuff. And he starts showing me Chat GPT, and like my mind was blown. Like the first
Oh
time
yeah.
I saw it,
Oh
I
yeah.
really was like wow, like that is the next iteration of like providing people with information or helping them do things faster. And like you said, I don't think it's going to replace strategic work anytime soon, but it may be something where, okay, now I have an agency, and where before I would have to bring on another designer, now
Yeah.
I don't need to
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
I can get the throughput I need
Yeah.
for a while with the staff that I have,
Yeah.
and or if I have an engineering team or a product team, maybe now we can ship 3 features a quarter instead of 1,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things like that. Like I think that's going to be
I agree.
what's going to happen over the next like few years, with
Yeah.
it.
I agree. I think the difference is that like when you punch a math problem into a calculator, there's one answer, right? There's just one definitive answer. And I think that when you start to ask ChatGPT or these AI for things, like it's going to kick out different stuff that's like unpredictable, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, how is it going to like, if you're asking it for a function for, let's just say a PHP function to do something, like there's a couple ways to do that. So it's like, oh, it's interesting to see how it's going to do that. Or if you're, so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the sort of difference here, is that it's not just one definitive answer, like a calculator. It's going to kick out something and it's going to be interesting because it's going to be like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. No,
wasn't.
man, my mind was blown. Well, no, I mean, I want to wrap up. What's the best business advice you think you've ever received or read? Yeah.
Okay. I think that there's a lot there. So
Yeah.
I think there's a couple things. Okay, it's related. So I think one is you can't do everything yourself, right? As an entrepreneur and a business owner. So like at first you are doing everything yourself, but at a certain point you have to identify like, in order for me to do my job, which is like what we talked about earlier, which is like one, lead the agency, but also like get new business. I can't like be the one who's neck deep in spreadsheets about our accounts payable. Like I need to
Mm-hmm.
like I need to like have somebody do that, and then get to the point where you're identifying people who are better are better at doing their thing than you ever were. So for me, like I was a designer and
Mm.
developer, but I don't think I was like amazing at either. I was pretty good at both. I could design some good websites and logos and I could code them, but like at a certain point, it's like, wait, like I should find somebody else who's better than me at this. But then what that really leads me to is people, right? And so
Mm.
like, it's funny. Early on, I'm part of something called the Entrepreneurs Organization, and early on, there's a lot of talk about how like people are the chassis of your business, or like it really is, a company is the people and it's not the product. And um, at first, I was like, I don't know if I agree with that, and like that doesn't, okay, maybe. But after 13 years in this business, it's just so true that like the people on your team can make or break a good company. And
Mm.
it's the difference between somebody giving a shit or somebody not.
Yeah.
People being good with clients or not. People, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the end of the day, it really is like your people are your company. And to a certain extent, it doesn't really matter what the company does. Just that, like they're,
Right.
it's a group of people who are dependable, trustworthy. They do a good job. I think you could take them and they could do anything. I mean, not of course deep sea diving or anything like that, but you know what I mean. Like I mean, I have heard about these
But
companies that are like, oh, we used to do this. I mean, but it's like, oh, we used to do this, and then 10 years later, we weren't even recognizable. We were a totally different company doing totally different
wow.
things, but it was like
Yeah.
the people and the culture that was like the through line. So yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. No, man, that's great, man. And again, I appreciate you taking the time, brother, on a Friday morning
Yeah, buddy.
to hang and do this session. This is just our second episode, so we're still getting our sea legs here and our whole production and flow of the podcast. So you're sort of one of my early guinea pigs, but always great to hang. I was hoping to get to Providence this summer, but couldn't make it up. My sister's up there,
Yes.
as you know, but hopefully we'll get back up there soon. And as always, if you're ever coming down to NYC, I'm always ready to grab some coffee with you, brother, anytime. Right, man. Thanks, Tom.
Later, dude.